All right, I want to move on to Michigan because this one it's really quite fascinating. There's kind of a weird showdown going on between Betsy DeVos and her family, which have long been these massive GOP funders in the state of Michigan in particular, also nationally. But in particular, they have been like the political kingmakers in the state. They have shaped the party in their image, all of this stuff. So DeVos, I don't know if you remember this. I honestly didn't remember it. But after January 6th, she resigned because she'd been education secretary. And then it came out that she was one of the people who went to Pence and was like, hey, what do you think about removing him through the 25th Amendment? So this came out through reporting. So that, of course, has created this giant schism, not only between her and Trump, but now there's this sort of like divide in the Republican Party within Michigan. Let's go ahead and put this New York Times article up on the screen. So they are trying to nominate a Republican candidate who can take out Gretchen Whitmer, who, of course, Republicans came to really hate during COVID because of her lockdown procedures. Now, she has proved to be more popular, I think, than they thought. The latest approval ratings have her above water at 55%. But you know, in this year and given some of the controversies, this certainly seemed like a prime pickup opportunity. So not only do you have this weird schism going on between the DeVos family and Trump, but we covered here as well, there was this crazy situation where actually the top two leading contenders to be the Republicans' gubernatorial nominee, they both were kicked off the ballot because they had insufficient signatures. They hired this consultant who was a total scam artist and used people that just blatantly, I mean, it was so obvious, blatantly forged signatures. So they ended up with not enough signatures to get on the ballot, and they both get kicked off the ballot. So then you end up with this sort of total free-for-all of a lot of more political neophytes, unknown folks, and ultimately DeVos gets behind a woman named Tudor Dixon, who's a conservative media personality, and puts millions of dollars behind her in terms of a super PAC. She starts to rise in the polls, and then DeVos actually writes a letter to Trump and is like, please, sir, Tudor Dixon is the only one who can defeat that woman, or whatever Trump normally calls Gretchen Whitmer. Trump, seeing the polls, I guess buries the DeVos hatchet and decides to also get in at the last minute for Tudor Dixon. So it looks like she has the edge to become the nominee. And again, this is someone who's, you know, dabbled in all sorts of like conspiracy theories and fringe ideas and in her forays into conservative media. And it looks like she's in the sort of, what do they call it, the pole position to win the gubernatorial nod tonight.
Yeah, that is the crazy part, which is that she's both a scion of the DeVos's, and there's been a bearing of the hatchet, but it hasn't stopped her from indulging Stop the Steal. The chaos, though, is just bad for the GOP in general, because this, again, was supposed to be a state where, look, Trump won Michigan in 2016. It was close in 2020 as well. And it was supposed to be a situation where Governor Whitmer is tight with the Biden administration. She was almost made vice president. You know, if Black Lives Matter hadn't happened, that certainly could have been. She was the poster face of lockdowns, of COVID procedure, which of course there's been a backlash on, and she's tried to walk away from that. There was all that stuff going on with her husband, and she was a national figure. Wasn't actually that popular in Michigan. But the chaos has now led to the situation where she is not nearly as beatable as what was previously thought. And the last July approval poll, look, has her up by 5 points. You know, even with the corrective, that essentially has her tied.
Yeah.
With the it was not supposed to be tied.
Way more popular than Biden.
Yeah, way more popular than Biden. Frankly, because she's put her head, buried her head in the sand probably for the last year. Tries to make people forget that she was ever doing any of that stuff. But listen, that's the strategy. And the Republican strategy was to tie her to the lockdowns and to the National Democratic Party, run against her as hard as possible, and show that the GOP can contest Michigan in the Trump era, which they have proven time and time again. So this is a major problem for the Michigan GOP. The chaos that has been unleashed within this has really put a damper on the down ballot problem, or on the enthusiasm and more, and unleashing this all the way to the last moment has made it so that many of the voters themselves don't really they're like, can we trust this lady? But Trump is kind of behind her. And then that, of course, is going to bleed into the overall election, especially if this person is endorsing Stop the Steal. So a common theme.
And she has extreme views on abortion. She doesn't favor exceptions for rape or incest. protest only when the mother's life is at risk. Wow. And I think she's also just another one of these candidates, and something Kyle Kondik talked about yesterday, is very unproven. I mean, she's never done this before. And so you have no idea how that type of person is going to ultimately be. It could be a good thing because they don't have a voting record. It's an outsider. People like that. And it can also end up going off the rails if they don't handle themselves in an effective way, like, you know, Dr. Oz has not performed particularly well in Pennsylvania. There's just a couple other races. There's actually a lot in Michigan. I won't go through all of them, but I just want to mention a couple. We've been talking about Peter Meijer, who's that Republican who voted for Trump's impeachment. He's an incumbent. He is facing a primary challenge from his right that Democrats have been backing, which is bananas and hypocritical and all of those things. You have two Democratic incumbents who have been drawn into the same district. Haley Stevens, who is more of sort of like you know, moderate corporate standard issue Democrat, Andy Levin, who's more progressive, who's backed by Bernie Sanders, and AIPAC, the American Israeli PAC, has been playing significantly in this race, trying to boost Haley Stevens against Levin, even though Levin is number one Jewish and number two, I guess, is a sponsor of the two-state solution bill in Congress. So they're going to the mat to defeat him, which is, you know, insane. There's a lot that could be said about that as well. And then the last thing that I'll say about Michigan is that they also have a redrawn state Senate map that has been gerrymandered to Democrats' advantage. And there is a chance that if Democrats not only hold on to the governor's mansion, which has been made more possible both by sort of the fading of those COVID lockdown concerns and the GOP and disarray situation, they have a decent chance to actually win control of the state Senate, which would be very significant and obviously a key swing state.
Yeah, so the Peter Meijer race obviously is the one with the democracy is being attacked. And yet, you know, I was reading yesterday, Krystal, the Democrats have spent more backing him than the entire budget of his campaign. That is how much his primary opponent, who's attacking Peter Meijer on Stop the Steal and for voting to impeach Trump, that is how much of a lift he's gotten from the National Democratic Party.
Amazing. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.